Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is our 5th season. I can hardly believe it. Today, we're joined by the University of West Georgia President Brendan Kelly, who will take us inside the decision to move their athletics program from Division II, where they were very highly successful, especially in football, to Division I. Dr. Kelly began his tenure in March of 2020, just as the campus and most of the world were closing down due to the pandemic. 3+ years later, he and his team took a deeper look at where the institution was coming out of a very disruptive event. With his former athletic conference changing members, he began conversations with the ASUN conference about joining them, a Division I conference. Their response, "We'd love to have you." Dr. Kelly said on the We Are One website announcing this big move, "This is not just an elevation of UWG Athletics. It raises the expectations and visibility of our institution as a whole." Join us for this conversation. Hi, Brendan. It's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
You know, you and I were chatting briefly before we started about the trajectory that West Georgia has been on since 1906, which for my listeners, they might know that was also the year that the NCAA was founded. So it's sort of ironic. But tell us a little bit about the history of the institution and how we got to the students and the size of institution you have today.
Well, West Georgia did start off as West Georgia College, and it was at that point in a very rural area of Georgia, and meant to be a place of higher learning that would be afforded to the a rural population. Now we are. I talk about that rural history. We're about 40 miles outside of city center Atlanta. And I don't know that we fit into that category quite the same way that we did, even though Carrollton, where our main campus is located, is still a wonderful, quaint town that feels like everybody knows each other. So UWG progressed. UWG just advanced and advanced over the course of decades, always having been a place that was rich in community. Focused on liberal arts education, still focused on, perhaps that agricultural and or rural mission. And then once we got into the late 20th century, and let's call late from the 1960s forth, that's when things started to evolve a little more rapidly. And eventually West Georgia College became the State University of West Georgia, and then to the University of West Georgia. And in the university system of Georgia, we have categories of universities or sectors. So there are access institutions, there are Research One institutions like the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech, and then in the comprehensive sector, which are generally institutions that are, we're awarding doctoral degrees, master's degrees, and the like, but do not have the research intensity of an R1. Right. That's when West Georgia became the University of West Georgia, which was in the 1990s, I believe 1996. That kind of set our trajectory for the coming decades. Enrollment has grown steadily during each of those periods. And now we are just under 13,000 students, with about 30% of those being graduate students.
That's quite a trajectory, and I appreciate you contextualizing that for my listeners, because obviously when people think of college sports, they think of some of the bigger programs, not only in your state, but in your region. And you're about to move into Division I, which was an announcement the institution made a couple of weeks ago. You've been out there. I've seen your op-eds in the Sports Business Journal and other places. I watched your rollout video, which I thought was quite excellent. So you're embracing this. So let's talk a little bit about the process. How did this come about? Has the idea been out there for 10 years, 20 years? Give us a sense, because you've been at the institution for about 8 years now. Is that right?
No, 3.5 actually.
Oh,
I
three and
started
a
on
half.
March 23rd, 2020. Yeah, I
Okay.
started
Oh, right,
just as we
right.
shut down.
Right in
So
the
if
middle of the
you,
pandemic. Okay.
yeah, no, no, I wish it was the middle. No, it was the beginning. I mean, literally, we had closed the university system of Georgia for 2 weeks. Just a couple of days before I started, and I actually started my appointment early as a result of
Oh,
that.
wow.
But when you show up to a new university, and I'd been a president before, but there are no students on campus, no employees on campus. You know, you're a president of nothing. Except a
Wow.
crisis. So
That's something. That's really something. So 3.5 years, and obviously trying to struggle through a pandemic, and all of a sudden you come out of it on 2023 and say we're going to make this massive move. Tell us a little bit about where these ideas came from.
yeah, so I think there's some things that are baked into the University of West Georgia that make this really unique. I'll start by saying I've had a lot of presidents call me since we made that decision, asking, should they? And my response is, I'm not sure that I'm not sure there's another university in the country that was in quite the position that the University of West Georgia was. Um, and we just happen to have some unique assets and opportunities that came from it. It had been contemplated in the past, let's say 10 years ago. It was floated and explored, but quickly quashed as an idea. Um, it didn't seem feasible for this regional comprehensive university to operate in that space. And at that time, when I look back at the books and the like, I can understand that. That's probably true. But the world changes over 10 years. I've worked in the Division I space before. I know the opportunities that are there, both for students, student athletes, for the university community at large. But we had to have a trigger, and that trigger came for us in November of 2022. We had some other schools in our conference, the Gulf South Conference, that had made the decision to shift their membership. And they did that, for their own business reasons, to put their own institutions into what they considered to be the best strategic position to endeavor into the future. Well, when you have football sponsoring members at Division II, and we are a football sponsoring member in Division II, that gets complicated because we looked around very quickly and saw that if we have members leaving who are in relatively close geography to our campus, we know all of the other football sponsoring members in the South Atlantic region of the United States, then we are going to have to make a transition over to, or we're going to have to make an assessment over to understanding what our increased costs would be. For instance, if you don't have other football sponsoring members in Division II in the state of Georgia that can be brought into the conference, we're going to have to start looking at states that are much farther away, which are going to be increased costs. In the same moment, we knew that our revenues were really tapped out at the Division II level. For us, our corporate sponsorships, our philanthropy, ticket sales, sales of corporate boxes, all of those things, have a price ceiling at Division II based on visibility. So given those circumstances, I always like to understand the landscape that we're working with. So I directed our team to look at a feasibility study to see what our options were, and our athletic director led that process. What we found was we didn't have a lot of options at Division II in the South Atlantic region. Almost every conference was either HBCU only, state only, or they weren't football sponsoring. So that left us, kind of in the position where we had to go and start looking at our Division I options. When we started that process, we started with the premise we shouldn't do this, which I think is a healthy and safe premise. It's very easy for everybody to get intoxicated with optimism. I believe that optimism is a choice and not a drug. And it's important for us to really study and understand whether this is the right strategic business decision for the University of West Georgia. And we did that. And what we found was the opportunities that existed for us in Division I outpaced everything that we were doing in Division II, and we were far more ready than we thought we were. We are 320+% of the average enrollment for Division II schools across the United States. 320+%. Well, we're 120+% of the enrollment of Division I schools across the United States. And right when you have that component, you have to look closely at it. The second piece, and it's a really, really critical one, is facilities. Because for most schools who would want to make that type of transition, that's going to be the barrier to entry. Well, I think you'll find that the facilities at the University of West Georgia were built around maybe a Division I dream at some point. We have a 10,000 seat football stadium, with a collection of corporate suites, and just it's a really phenomenal place in our athletics complex. Great soccer and softball facilities. We're just about to address baseball and renovating that. We have the third largest arena for basketball and volleyball of any university in the state of Georgia. And the state of Georgia has got a lot of institutions and high level collegiate athletics. When you have those assets in place, you have a lot of options that others do not. Others have to put lots and lots of money into trying to get into that position, and those investments were already made here. So once we had those pieces in place, our premise of we shouldn't do this started to become, I'm not sure we can't not do this. And we just kept beating this up as a business decision. All right, forget every other element. It's just, does it make sense for the business of the University of West Georgia? Is it a sustainable business model? What we found was it's likely a more sustainable business model than what we had at Division II, at least for us. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's circumstances are the same. I've worked in 4 states. Funding works differently in every state. Priorities are different in every state. The organization of universities are different. Pressures on them are different. But for us in this place and in our unique circumstances, this became the right business decision for UWG.
I think you bring up so many interesting points about that process of thinking through it. I love your statement about optimism as a choice, not a drug. I think that's true for athletics for sure. But I think my sense is you're also reacting to the realities in the marketplace. There just doesn't seem to be a place for Division II in college athletics. And whether it's the fact that there aren't as many institutions as there are in Division I and Division III, or because there's such large areas of the country that don't even have a Division II program, it incentivizes more travel. It seems like Division II really lacks a placeholder in the psyche of college sports. And it sounds like that's one of the reasons why you thought we can elevate ourselves into the conversation by just changing our classification. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I don't know that I would agree that Division II doesn't have a place. I think Division II for football sponsoring member schools is a unique variable. I think there are, again, every institution has its own mission and its own business plan, and the level of competition that you can get to in Division II. I have a good friend and a supporter who always says the difference between Division I and Division II is often 1 inch and 1 second. And the number of athletes that we had who even graduated last season who are now playing professionally in various leagues in the United States and around the world is a testament to the fact that you've got some high level talent that plays at that level. But again, we're a football sponsoring member, so I can't account for all of the other institutions. Yeah. For us, we had to look at sustainability in the Atlanta metropolitan area, in the state of Georgia, and we had to see what the opportunity would be. And And it wasn't so much a relevance question as it was visibility and revenue. And it's how do we make a sustainable business model? Universities are really good at building things. They're terrible at taking them away, even though any other business would go, well, that thing's not working. I'm going to stop doing that thing so that I can make everything else stronger. And yes, the marketplace has changed in higher education dramatically. So those forces are becoming much more prevalent in our decision calculus. For us, we're just at a place where more visibility is something we are ready for. And we have the assets and infrastructure to do it, and the opportunities that come along with that increased visibility, both in terms of revenue, student engagement, alumni engagement, et cetera. They made sense for the way in which we are doing business at the University of West Georgia. And quite frankly, that is totally focused on making certain that we are constantly transforming every dimension of the experience of students that we serve at this university. This is one of those contributions.
I mean, you had some excellent success in football in Division II. There's no doubt about that you were at the top rung of where football programs aspire to be. So who's your new group? When you move into Division I, you complete your transition. Who's your new group, not only in terms of football competition, but peer and aspirant institutions in this process?
So one, it's funny. Our industry uses peer and aspirant institutions all the time. I think that is not an important metric. We are not competitor focused. We are consumer focused. So we focus in on the students we're in service to and the types of experience they have. So I don't care that much about peer and aspirants, because just because somebody else is doing something that we are not, or has something that we do not, doesn't make that inherently better, doesn't make them inherently stronger. It doesn't inherently diminish us. I've spent a lot of my life and career not doing what a whole bunch of other people were doing. And that has proven to be a much greater success than just sitting and chasing the type of social hierarchy that existed in middle school. And I don't mean to diminish that metric, but I do press against it, because I think that's driven our industry too much. What we were looking for as partners, we weren't looking for competitors. We were looking for universities that had similar ambitions and were looking for similar experiences, that wanted competition, because the students they're in service to want competition, and alumni want competition, and people want to feel like they're part of something. And that takes partner competitors who are all in trying to curate that experience. We found that in the Atlantic Sun Conference, and in the football space in the United Athletic Conference, which is a partnership between the two. That is, anytime you are making a move that's going to transform the experience of everybody, and that's precisely what this was, really wanted to make sure that we had people on the other side of the sidelines or the court or the track that had the same interests as us. So I don't look at it as kind of who's our new peer aspirants. It's now we have a new team on the field, and it's a team of universities in the Atlantic Sun Conference. We are trying to enhance the experience that we're providing those we're in service to. We're trying to enhance the visibility and excitement that is kind of around each other. We're all invested in creating great rivalries and making that part of the culture and traditions of our institutions. So I know that's probably maybe others would say, oh, here we dream of being XYZ. I've just had some experiences in my career where maybe XYZ isn't worth dreaming about, and we should focus on what we're doing right now and and into the future, because what we're doing right now is serving a lot of people who have first and last names, and they expect the underpinnings of their life that's created in a university to be remarkable.
Well, you talked in one of your op-eds about being a first choice university
Mhm.
for students. So tell me about where you draw your students from and how important you believe the football experience is to their experience.
Let's start with where we draw students from. Most of our students come from the state of Georgia, although we have students from more than 60 countries and almost 40 states, and that is a regular enrollment composition for us. Again, we're almost 30% graduate students. We have the largest and most robust college of education in the state of Georgia. I mean, if you take the next 4 universities that produce educators and add them all together, they still pale to what we produce in a single year. Our graduate credentials are sought after in the same way, and that's both statewide and nationwide. I don't think you'll find too many superintendents or principals who haven't passed through West Georgia or been touched by it at some point. We have a lot of students within 100 miles of campus, which is not surprising since when you draw a 50-mile radius or 60-mile radius around campus, you get about 6.1 million people, even though we're in a town of 130,000. So we are a university that's very much in service to the state of Georgia. We are one that, at least since I've come, it tries to be the solution to a problem for the state of Georgia. I note the educator piece because even though we're one of the, I think, 10 largest colleges of education in the country, we are trying to be a solution to the professional educator crisis in America, and specifically for the state of Georgia. We've grown our nursing program by 52% in the last couple of years in service to that talent pipeline need. Our fastest growing program in undergraduate space right now is computing, which we brought online a year and a half ago because the state of Georgia has a tremendous number of needs in that area. So for us, we're very focused on making this state successful and making the students who choose to come to the University of West Georgia, most of which come from this state, already love it, don't want to leave, successful and connected to relevant talent pipelines. That being said, they should have a rich experience while they're on the second largest campus in the university system of Georgia, one that is really picturesque and kind of feels like a destination campus the way it should. And we've gone through a lot of work over the last few years curating that experience. And the football piece plays into that. We were by some voted the best game day experience in the state of Georgia last year. And that came out of us focusing. And once I got here, I said, look at a football game shouldn't be something that people who love football feel compelled to attend. I don't care whether you like football or not. The game day experience should be so good and so rich and kind of so laden with community that everybody just wants to be there, whether you care about football or not. You'll just care because you're there, and it's through osmosis. And that's where we invested our effort and energy. And that's what made for such a big homecoming weekend this past weekend. Anytime you walk away from homecoming totally exhausted because the number of people you have to engage and the number of events that just go string together, you're doing something right because everybody's showing up to take advantage of it.
Right.
And I think that might have been our largest ever. At least that's how alumni talked to me about it over the weekend. So I hope that addresses your question. The composition of students are individuals that historically have been educated at West Georgia and then stayed in the state of Georgia. So we try to connect those dots together. When you talk about first choice, that is the driver behind all of it. When I first used the term first choice, we had people who've been part of this university for a long time who didn't love that. Well, I understand that because it sounds like a commentary on something, but it's not. That's how we orient ourselves every morning. I meet with every new employee every month. I'm the first person who meets them at human resources orientation at the beginning of the month. And I know that among my friends who are presidents in the country, I'm probably unique in that regard. But you can't get to first choice unless everybody understands that is their job. So we might get together at orientation, and we've got a new custodian, and we have a assistant coach for a sport, and we have 2 new professors and a staff member in financial aid, and numerous others. Now they all have very different jobs, but my message is always, look at first choice is about our mindset. And for me, I've been married to the other Dr. Kelly for almost 27 years. She was my freshman orientation group leader. So I've known her for a long, long time. And after we were married 20 years, I can't just wake up and go, well, we've been married 20 years now. I just stopped trying. Right? If we're going to, the things that have kept us happy and together and kind of passionate about that relationship for all of those years was first choice. It was me waking up and going, now I have to engage in the behaviors and the choice making and creating outcomes that are going to have her choose to love me again today. And then tomorrow I'm going to have to wake up and I have to do it again. And it's a dynamic environment because tastes change and preferences change and people change. So we're always going to have to be chasing after first choice, and we will never actually get there if we're doing it right. So I tell every employee, look, at your job is to curate a first choice university. And then you do that just like I do it through my role as president. You're going to do it through whatever role you have, but that is your job. That's our purpose. So when we say first choice, we mean, and again, probably not the most alluring thing or popular thing among our peers in higher education is everything's on the table every day. If something's not working, we don't do that thing anymore. We judge people on their best ideas and not their worst ones. And just because I invented the best thing that could have been possible for the University of West Georgia 3 weeks ago doesn't mean that it's not the worst idea today. And if it is, then we're not doing that thing anymore. And it took some time for people to become comfortable with that because it takes a lot of courage to live in that type of environment. But that is the environment we're in now. And you have a huge percentage of the people who work on behalf of UWG who embrace that philosophy and then demonstrate it through their actions every day and their engagements every day. So that's the address on first choice. It's a really important component to what we're doing as a university.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And in a competitive market space where, let's say, where I live in the Mid-Atlantic, but also the Northeast and the Upper Midwest, institutions are fighting tooth and nail to keep their enrollments steady. And it sounds like in the southeastern part of the United States, you have more latitude to try to create distinctions between yourself. And it sounds like that's an important driver, is this idea that we are distinctive because we want to have the best experience, the first choice experience. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes. Although I don't know that there's any more opportunity to be distinctive here than there. We do have different population variables and demography than what you're experiencing in your area. And we don't, we are in the same type of hyper competitive market where there are more options for students than ever before. And obviously fewer people choosing to participate and take advantage of higher education opportunities. So I'm not sure there's something baked into the market. We are just considerate of the marketplace because that is where we live. We say it all the time. We are responsible for the learning of students that are here, not the ones we desire, not the ones we would hope. We're here to service the people who are right here, right now, and we're going to focus in on solving that problem and not worry too much about the things we can't control. And a lot of the market variables are things we can't control.
So let's shift a little bit to the athletes that'll be affected by this decision, changing conferences, the perception that Division I is is a bigger deal. The recruiting strategy changes for the coaches. How can you offer three specifics as to how this move enhances your athletes' experiences in this bigger picture?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. One, my daughter was a college athlete. The size of the stage does matter. Moving from having access to watching an away game via streaming service to ESPN and ESPN Plus, that makes a big difference in the minds of students. You think about like the box you keep in your closet that has that note that you received, or a letter from this, or a photograph of this that maybe somebody opens after you die, and they go, "Oh gosh, look at all these things." Well, in our world, a lot of those artifacts are digital, and my 17-year-old son told me last night they're probably more permanent than the paper and the photograph. I don't know if I agree with that yet, but I'm thinking about it. So being able to have that type of visibility changes their experience a lot. The second piece is the level of competition. We're universities. The one thing that we are supposed to do is ask every single person who's part of the institution to be better tomorrow than they were today. And that's what collegiate athletics calls an athlete to do, calls a coach to do, calls the university to do. The same way that, the Department of Mathematics should, right? And when we compete at a higher level and get a chance to play against a higher level of competition, it just emboldens that call to action. And the third piece is there is a huge sense of pride that comes along with this elevation. Students feel a stronger sense of affinity to the university. They feel a stronger sense of place. We had a wonderful graduate student who I've known since she was an undergraduate. She said when we received that email from you about the elevation, which they received about 5 minutes after the Board of Regents for the university system in Georgia voted to allow us to make that move, she was in the library and she said, everybody just got so excited. There were a few hundred students in the library, and they're like coming out of study rooms, giving each other five. They don't even know each other. It's difficult to find experiences or variables in human communities that become the connective tissue between people like that. And that's precisely what happened here.
It's remarkable to me because, again, as I mentioned earlier, and you've talked about, you've had great success in Division II, but there's just something about this, and I'm trying in all my research to understand what shifts. Is it okay, you're now validated in the marketplace, but then also looking at the structure of Division I, maybe don't say never, but you may not be in the level that Georgia is. You may not be in the level that Clemson is. But you're still Division I. Can you explain to my listeners how that works?
Oh yeah, it's funny. I studied my PhD is in political communication and rhetoric. So I studied a lot of the work of Kenneth Burke, and the one thing that Kenneth Burke said about humans is that they are goaded by hierarchy and rotten with perfection. And that, when you just said that, you said, "Oh, you might not be at the level of Georgia." Well, we're not going to be at the level of Georgia.
I mean, okay. I didn't want to diminish your hope and your aspirations.
No, you know what? I'm also not president of the United States, and I don't wake up feeling bad about it. In fact, most days I feel pretty good. I say that because I don't work for the University of Georgia, and none of the students that I serve go to the University of Georgia or any other university. They care about their experience. And we don't, again, we don't live in a competitor-focused mindset. We all have families and lives and experiences, and either you're gonna base your entire experience in a comparative mindset to somebody else and something else and someplace else, in which case you will never be excited about anything. Or you are going to focus in on not allowing envy to steal joy. And for us, all of the variables I just talked about are exciting and important. And it is only when you put them into a comparative mindset that matters. You know, University of West Georgia has never played against the University of Georgia, right? We've never been on national television, but we can now. Right? And, you know, I went to Eastern Michigan University. And I will tell you, when I was in college, Eastern Michigan University, which again, that's, you know, it's not the University of South Carolina or Georgia or UNC. It's not Duke. But we played in the NCAA tournament for men's basketball against Duke, and we won. And I'm going to tell you, when that happened, everybody at that institution, like, they started walking out of their apartments on campus. Why? Because we just beat Duke. Right? Are we going to beat Duke every time? Who cares? That wasn't yesterday. That was a quarter century ago. And we still talk about it. Though that's what sport does. You know, we have some wonderful universities in this country that don't win national championships every year. But the sense of pride that comes along with being part of that university community is so rich, so wonderful. And that is only because they don't allow envy to be the variable that's going to, you know, guide and construct their identity. So for us, that's not the question. The question's, how do we get better? And the answer is, we get better by taking on better competition. How do we get more visible? We get more visible by taking on better competition. How do we put ourselves into circumstance where that can be just part of our DNA? That's the way. You know, if we just sat and, you know, in fact, who was it? One of the members of the Bucks, the Milwaukee Bucks, said, somebody asked him, you know, your season didn't end in an NBA championship. Was it a failure? And he was so incensed by that, because, you know, like, the experience of the whole season, every point and every play, every autograph signed, every, you know, game day experience, like, all of those things make for a great season. And sometimes you win the championship and sometimes you don't win, but it doesn't mean that it was a failure. It just means that was not the end result. So for us, I just believe that human experience and experience at universities is much richer than just having that one single outcome. Because if that's what we are, if that's all that it is, if that's the only way to define success, then we might as well throw our hands up and walk off the field in basically every aspect of our lives.
Well, as you well know, the culture in the United States is winner. Winner, you've lost the entire thing. I live in Philadelphia, and right now we are obsessed with the Philadelphia Phillies and the Philadelphia Eagles because they're winning. And we're disappointed when they're not. And then we have this culture of winning trumps everything. And so it's interesting. You really have to.
I don't know. Yeah, but do we? Because I go, doesn't fandom trump everything? I'm from the Detroit area. I mean, I've gone my entire life without the Lions winning, but somehow we still focus in, like, if we win on Thanksgiving, that's all that matters.
That's
the
true.
Whole
you do sort of moderate your expectations. Yes.
Yeah, I don't allow other people to create expectations for me. I don't believe we are the ones who create American culture. We are the ones that define what is valuable and what is not valuable. And I don't allow other people to do it for me. And I'm not going to allow other people to do it for the University of West Georgia. We have a rich experience, and one that thousands and thousands of people came back to celebrate in multiple iterations what this university has been. and is this past weekend. It was just brimming with pride, brimming with pride. And some of them were, athletes, and their sport got canceled 30 years ago, and now we're bringing it back. And some of them had never been an athlete, and they just loved the professor who saved their life. And I go, our experience is just more complicated. It's more complex and more complicated than that. I just don't accept those premises.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it's for many people would be a great goal to look at life that way, but they tend to put it in, we lost last night or we won today or whatever. But
well, I love the fact that they'll be talking about us in that conversation.
There you go. So as we begin to wind down the conversation, we didn't talk a lot about the data, the finances, what it's going to take. One of the things that I mentioned to you in our pre-email conversation, I mean, part of your financial strategy is not to use student fees, but to also use game guarantees. And that might set your teams up for, the occasional really rough game where they get blown out, depending on how much money you're seeking in these guarantee games. Talk about that strategy and how your coaches can help manage that.
So one, we can get blown out for free. That's always possible. Always possible. And I've been in an environment where game guarantees were part of how we made the whole environment work, and that's just the nature of things. But it also gives students a really unique experience. Students who haven't competed at that level before, all of a sudden getting a chance to do that, right? Getting a chance to compete on national television with that they haven't had that opportunity before. That's real, and that matters a lot. In an environment where you are trying to kind of constantly challenge yourself to go after your best, and that's going to change all the time, right? You have to go and take on the best competition. In this case, it also becomes part of the economic framework that makes this viable for us. It is a mutual benefit. It benefits the Power 5 team that we play just as much as it benefits the University of West Georgia for being part of that contest and part of that platform. And just like my example of Eastern Michigan and Duke, once in a while it turns out differently, and that becomes just an enormous point of pride. And that point of pride, that circumstance, lasts for years with an institution. So if our challenge to athletes is for us to be best, we have to go and take on the best, and we get paid for the privilege of that. When we go back to playing a team at let's call it a different level, right? One that might not be at the center of the national stage, we will have been better for taking on the higher level of competition. That is keeping students motivated in a university, whether you're in athletics or not. That is the central message, isn't it? I mean, we ask students to come into class every day and not demonstrate how much they know, but how much they have the ability to learn. And that's going to be done through getting punched in the face sometimes and failing and making assumptions about things that were wrong. And there's a lot of variables in that. I do believe that's just part the heart and soul of a university. So it's up to us to have the right coaches and athletic administrators and the right support system in place so that athletes who are still emerging in how they, in their mindset and how they think about the world can be inspired by the opportunity to be challenged at the highest level. It is an honor and a privilege for athletes all over the world to go to the Olympics and compete. And it's oftentimes the person who is coming in last that we're talking about because of just the heroic nature of them to get there, right? And that experience plays a really fundamental role in their life. So I believe, as somebody who, I competed in one of the top speech and debate programs in the United States during college. I understand getting blown out, and I understand winning championships. And just because somebody has a larger, more well-financed team doesn't mean they always win. We just have to, if that wasn't true, then the Rocky movies would not be iconic in America.
A fine analogy for a Philadelphian. I appreciate that. My last question is the question of the day, the moment where we are in college athletics with D1 schools leveraging name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal. It seems like top D1 schools are recruiting out of other D1 schools versus going to high school to get their top athletes. How does West Georgia navigate this?
Yeah, so the transfer portal is the nature of things now. We will both benefit from it, and sometimes we will not benefit from it. School like ours lands a really fantastic athlete, breakthrough athlete. They might make the choice to go to another program the next year. We understand that. I also look at that and go, wasn't it great that we were part of that student's educational journey and putting them in a better position for them to be successful? If that is a better position for them to be successful, it doesn't always turn out that way, right? But that is part of what we're supposed to do as a university. In the same moment, University of Alabama lands a breakthrough athlete who is, not on the field or on the court. They might be looking for an opportunity to actually play in college. And that's when a school like ours will benefit from that transfer portal, just like we have at Division II. We've had, Division I transfers that have helped us, just like we have sent a number of athletes from Division II to Division I schools. And I'm glad that they've found the opportunities just the way we have. Name, image, and likeness. Until the United States Congress decides on how to regulate, we live in a open marketplace, and it is what it is, and we will navigate that the same way everybody else is navigating it. There is no kind of one approach that this approach really works and this approach doesn't. People are inventing it as they go. It's now something that high schools have to deal with, and that's America. I don't worry about the things that I can't control. I worry about how to make us successful in the environment that we're in, and those are the variables that we control. So again, we look at, it's a mindset issue. It is. It's a matter of can we be successful in XYZ environment? And for us, the answer is yes, we can.
Well, Brendan Kelly, I really appreciate your perspective, your thoughtfulness, and your willing to share with my listeners this humongous move that you're about to make and the impact that you think it'll have on the institution. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.